Okay, guys, let's read. We do not need magic to transform our world. We carry all of the power we need inside ourselves already. J.K. Rowling. 1. Becoming limitless. I'm so stupid, I don't understand, I'm too dumb to learn. These were my mantras growing up. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't tell myself that I was slow, dumb, and that I would never learn to read, much less amount to anything later in life. If a pill exists that could supercharge my brain and make me smarter in one swallow, as there was in 2011 movie Limitless, starring Bradley Cooper, I would have given anything to take it. I wasn't the only one who felt the way I did about myself. If you'd asked my teachers when I was a kid, many would have said that I was the last person they'd expect to be writing this book for you. Back then, they would have been surprised to know that I was reading a book, let alone writing one. This all stems from an incident in kindergarten that completely altered the course of my life. I was in a class one day, and there were sirens outside the window. Everyone in the classroom took notice, and the teacher looked out and said, "She saw fire trucks." The entire class responded to this information the way kindergartens do. We immediately rushed to the windows. I was particularly excited because by the point I was already obsessed with superheroes. I still am. To me, firefighters were the closest thing to real life superheroes I knew. I bolted to the window with everyone else. The only problem was that I wasn't tall enough to be able to look down at the fire trucks. One kid went to grab his chair to stand on, and that inspired the rest of us to do the same. I ran back to my desk to get mine, pushing it right up against the huge iron radiator that ran along the bottom of the window. I got up on my chair so the firefighters and completely lit up. This was so exciting. My eyes stared and mouth gasped as I watched these courageous heroes in action with their seemingly impenetrable uniforms and their bright red vehicles. But then one of the other kids grabbed my chair from beneath me, which caused me to lose balance and go flying headfirst into the radiator. I hit the metal ladder extremely hard and I started losing blood. The school rushed me to the hospital where doctors tended to my wounds, but they were candid with my mother afterwards. The injury to my brain was not mild. My mother said I was never quite the same after that, where I had been an energized, confident, curious child before. Now I was noticeably shut down and had a few new difficulty learning. I found it extremely hard to focus. I couldn't concentrate and my memory was awful. As you can imagine, school became an ordeal for me. Teachers would repeat themselves until I learned to pretend to understand, and while all the other kids were learning to read, I couldn't make any sense out of the letters. Do you remember getting in those reading circles, passing around the book and having to read out loud? For me, that was the worst. Nervously waiting as the book crept closer and closer, only to look at the page and not understand one word. I think that's where my crippling fear of public speaking initially came from. It would take me another 3 years to be able to read, and it continued to be a struggle and an uphill battle for a long time after that. I'm not sure I ever would have learned to read if it weren't for the heroes I met and saw in comic books. Regular books couldn't hold my attention at all, but my fascination with comics drove me to keep pushing myself until I could read their stories without waiting for someone else to read them to me. I would learn them by flashlight under my covers late at night. Those stories gave me hope that one person could overcome impossible odds. My favorite superheroes growing up were the X-Men, not because they were the strongest, but because they were the misunderstood and weirdly different. I felt I could relate to them. They were mutants, they didn't fit into society, and people who didn't understand them and shun them. That was me, minus the superpowers. The X-Men were outcasts, and so was I. I belong in their world. I grew up in Westchester County, a suburb of New York City, and I was super excited one night to discover that, according to the comic books, Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters was located near me. When I was 9 years old, I would get on my bike nearly every weekend to ride around my neighborhood looking for the school. I was obsessed. I thought if only I could locate it, I would find it in that school, a place where I finally fit in, a place where it was safe to be different, a place where I could discover and develop my own superpowers. The boy with the broken brain. In the real world, life was not very kind. It was around this time that my grandmother, who lived with us and helped raise me, started showing advanced signs of dementia. Watching someone you love lose their mind and memory is hard to describe. It was like losing her over and over until she passed. She was my world, and combined with my learning challenges, she is why I am so passionate about brain health and fitness. Back in school, I was bullied and made fun of, and not just on the playground but in the classroom too. I remember one day in elementary school, a teacher, frustrated because I wasn't getting the lesson, pointed at me and said, "That's the boy with the broken brain." I was just crushed to realize that this was how she saw me, and the others probably saw me the same way. Often when you put a label on someone or something, you create a limit. The label becomes the limitation. Adults have to be very careful with their external words because this quickly becomes a child's internal words. That's what happened with me. In that moment, whenever I struggled to learn, did badly on a quiz, wasn't picked for a team in a gym class, or fell behind my other classmates, I would tell myself it was because my brain was broken. How could I possibly expect to do as well as others did? I was damaged. My mind didn't work like everyone else's, even when I studied much harder than my schoolmates. My grades never reflected the effort I was putting in. I was too stubborn to give up and managed to move on from grade to grade, but I was hardly thriving while I was advanced in math. Because of the help of a few of my academically talented friends, I was horrible at most of the other subjects, especially classes such as English, reading, foreign languages, and music. Then in my freshman year of high school, things got to the point where I was at risk of failing English. My parents were called in by my teacher to discuss what I could do to muster a passing grade. She offered an extra credit project for me. I was to write a report comparing the lives and accomplishments of two geniuses, Leonardo da Vinci and Albert Einstein. She told me that if I did a good job on this report, she would be able to give me enough points to make sure I passed the class. I consider this to be a huge opportunity, a chance to hit the reset button on what had been a difficult start of my high school career. I committed everything I had to writing the best report I possibly could. I spent hours and hours and hours at the library after school trying to learn everything I could learn about these two brilliant minds while working on this paper. Interestingly, during that research, I came across multiple mentions that Albert Einstein and Leonardo da Vinci each struggled with less learning difficulties. After weeks of effort, I typed up the final report. I was so proud of what I had done that I had the pages professionally bound. This report was a statement for me. It was the way I was gonna announce to the world that I was capable of doing. The day the report was due, I put it in my backpack, excited about handing it to my teacher, and even more excited about the response I anticipated she would have to what I'd done. I planned to give it to her at the end of the class, so I sat through whatever we were doing that day, trying to concentrate but constantly finding my thoughts fleeting. Back to the book, I expected to see on my teacher's face when I presented her with the report, but then she threw me a curveball I was not prepared to hear. About halfway through the class period, the teacher ended her lesson and told the students that she had a surprise for them. She said that I had been working on an extra credit report and that she would like me to present it to the class now. I had spent most of my school life trying to shrink so small that I wouldn't recall one in class. When you are the broken one, you don't feel like you have much to offer. I was beyond shy, and I didn't like to draw attention to myself. My superpower back then was being invisible. I was also deathly afraid of speaking in public. I'm not exaggerating here. If you hooked me up to a heart monitor at that moment, I might have broken the machine. On top of this, I could barely breathe. There was simply no way I was going to be able to stand in front of everyone and talk to them about the work I'd done. So I took the only option I saw available to me. I'm sorry I didn't do it, I stuttered, just barely getting the words out of my mouth. The expression of disappointment on my teacher's face, so different from the expression I'd fantasized earlier, was so profound that my heart nearly broke. But I just couldn't do what she wanted me to do. When class was over, after everyone had left, I threw my report in the garage, and along with it, a big part of my self-respect and worth. Okay, so that's it, guys. Tomorrow you are closer than you think. Okay. So that's it, guys. Bye.